Welcome Miracles Tribe members and our Miracles Attraction community on Facebook. I'm Teresa McGallagher and I'm joined here by my business partner, Carly Judd Hardy. And we have another exciting guest for you in our interview series on people whose lives have been transformed by their practice of A Course in Miracles. Carly will tell you about our guest coming to us from Florida today, Carol Howe.
Thank you, Teresa. What a treat it is to have Carol Howe with us this morning. Yes, we are just delighted, Carol, that you would come and join us. And a little bit about Carol. She is involved in what she says, what everyone else is doing, to study the Course in Miracles in order to remove any blockages to love. But along the way, in the 44 years that she's been engaged in this work, she has garnered the title Mother of Spirituality from those who love the Course and see her devotion. She is a teacher, and it's a powerful message of love and healing. She was also a close friend of the Course in Miracles co-scribe, the late Bill Thetford. Carol has authored an intimate account of Bill's life entitled Never Forget to Laugh. What a great title. That catches your attention right there. They're personal reflections of Bill Thetford, the co-scribe. It also contains a comprehensive history of the backstory of how A Course in Miracles came to be. And Carol, we now consider you and are so honored to have you as an elder within the Course in Miracles community. She is one of only 3 people in the world, and I think Teresa was telling me that they may have passed. So it may be that Carol, yes, is one of the lone ones standing as an elder who still teaches A Course in Miracles and yet had a personal relationship with the scribe Bill Thetford. So thank you, Carol. We'll turn it over to you now, and we're excited to hear your story and know that those in our community are excited as well.
Well, I will thank you very kindly for inviting me. And since your format is, how did we get into this in the first place? What was like before and what is like after and so on, I'll adhere to that. When I was a very little girl, before I even started to school, and I started to school at 5 because my birthday was in the fall. And at that point, like, you could do that. And even at that time, I was on my quest. It's like, there's something not right here. Something is missing. And I was very aware that something was missing, and I was on my quest right from the beginning. It was almost like going to school was the B answer, because I could not follow through with what my A interest was what is missing in this life and how am I going to find it? So all through my early years, we moved when I was 6 to another town, and we went to, I remember the first time we went to church, I grew up in the Episcopal Church, and went, and it was a perfectly lovely sermon by a well-educated man, a very intellectually adept man. And he was saying whatever one says in church. And I remember having the very distinct thought, this is not right. This is not what Jesus taught. Don't ask me where a kind of thought like that came to a 6-year-old, but it was like, at that point, I wouldn't have been able to say what was right, but I was very clear that what they were saying was not it. So all through my growing up years, I was blessed to be born into a metaphysically friendly household. My mother was interested in all kinds of metaphysical things. So I grew up with books, with interesting people, with a lot of assets for which I am eternally grateful. It's as if the universe knew what my quest was, and I was provided a lot of great raw material for that. So when I went to college, it was the same thing. And I was very successful in my outer life and so on and so forth. But my interest in metaphysics and what is missing in this world continued along a parallel track with all of my, uh, shall we say, worldly quests. I graduated, I taught advanced math in high school and college for a couple of years. I was a systems engineer with IBM for nearly 6 years and loved all of those things. But right along with it, whatever was available in the metaphysical world and Edgar Cayce books or whatever, I was at it. So when it was time not to be working and it was time to stay home and have babies, which I did, I have 2 fantastic boys. Then I could really indulge my quest. But here was my problem. I thought what was missing was information. I read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books of everything from Eastern religion to psychology to like the whole gamut of anything that might produce this missing information. It's like, how can I be missing this information when and there was not very much you could go to in the way of workshops or anything like that. So I had a good, besides all of the early questing, I had a good 20 years of diligently reading and researching and doing TM, transcendental meditation, and so on and so forth, until one fateful day, 43 and a half years ago, we had a house guest, a fascinating psychic reader kind of house guest. And he sent us a subscription to New Realities magazine as a house gift. Well, the edition that was our first edition in our subscription was the first time anything was written publicly about A Course in Miracles. There was quite a long, several pages devoted to this article in something called New Realities magazine. It had been called Psychic magazine, but when the editor wanted to do a story about the course, Bill Thetford said, no way are we going to have a story about A Course in Miracles in something called Psychic magazine. That's going to give it a slant that's not accurate. So we'll do the interview, but only if you change the name. And so Bill suggested, well, why don't you just name this magazine New Reality? So they did. And this was its maiden voyage, so to speak. And there were interviews with Jerry Jampolsky and a couple of other people because it was so new at this time. You know, the course as we know it now was only published in 1976. And this is 1977 when I run into it. So the introduction to the text was included. I read that introduction and I knew it. I have come to the end of literally a lifelong search. I didn't know what that meant. All I knew was I ordered it. It wasn't available, of course, in bookstores. So I ordered it. And when that package came with, it was in 3 books, of course, then, rather than the single volume like it is now. And as I held that package, before I even took the books out, I became aware my search is over. What I'm looking for is in here. Well, it turns out that I discovered as a new student of the course that it was not information I was missing. It was an experience that I was missing. So all of my early years of looking and looking and looking and looking, I was not doing it out of lack of success in the world. I was more than successful in everything I did, you know, whether it was business-wise or socially or anything else. So I did not come at it because I was bereft and miserable or lost or anything else. I came at it because I had an incessant desire and a pressing need, it felt like on my part, to find out what is the missing ingredient in life. Because although all these other things were wonderful and I'm ever so grateful for them, that didn't scratch the itch, so to speak. But once I got into the course, I had the same experience that so many people do. It's like And I have had many people express it using these very same words, like you can feel the truth come up through the words. You can feel the energy. You can feel the wavelength, so to speak, that this material represents and is on, so to speak. So I would say almost instantly, I settled into knowing that dealing with this course was the most important thing I could possibly do, aside from raising my children. In other words, it's like this was it. And it became the centerpiece of my life right on, immediately. And it's not a matter that immediately my life became better, because my life was not really a big problem before. But what I will tell everybody when you start the course is your life might possibly get worse rather than better. And you go, well, what's the big idea of that? Well, what the big idea of that is, this course is about removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence. This is a huge enterprise. The blocks to the awareness of love's presence is, for the most part, unrecognized or unacknowledged guilt. And I have had so many people say, I was so excited. I started to do the course and I sat down and I said, okay, I'm going to just do my best with this. And then things fell apart. So I will warn everybody, things may appear, notice the word appear, to get worse rather than better. It's not getting worse. It's unrecognized, we'll call it old programming, that's actually keeping you from experiencing the fullness of your birthright, has got to come up to be released. You cannot release what you don't know is there. And the course is very clear. Its centerpiece is discovering the guilt that we carry and letting it go. Its means for doing that is relationships, because our troublesome relationships are going to reveal to us, because sometimes the general word guilt is kind of like, I remember when I read all this stuff about guilt, it's like, I don't think I'm all that guilty. Oh, well, how uninformed I was about how things really work. So it's like relationships, whether it's primarily with people. I've done a vast amount of private counseling as well as teaching in every imaginable way over these years, and over and over and over, the issue is somebody that drives you crazy. It can be family members, it can be next door neighbors, it can be colleagues, it can be, the dead grandmother, it doesn't matter. But relationships will tell you with great precision precisely what you hold against yourself and what you feel guilty about and what you must let go. That's what it's for. And our reward for that is, we don't just have a nice time and space life. We get to go beyond. It's a teaching of non-duality. And I have had some experiences that I wouldn't trade for anything in the world, where it's not that the time and space world goes away. It's that the thinking mind gets quiet enough and it gets still enough that the joy and the happiness and the peace of mind and an experience that has no proper adjective can make itself known. It's not that it comes in from somewhere else as if it's been absent. We finally get enough of the blocks, which is our guilt, our planning, our defending, our thinking mind, our moving to past and future thought rather than staying in the moment we're in. So everything, when things conspire, that I'm quiet, I'm present, I'm open, I'm fully accepting there's no judging going on, then that ever-present joy has a place to show up. It's not that we make it happen. It has never left. It would be like if I closed the drapes across this window out looking into my very pretty yard out here. And if drapes were closed and I couldn't see out, it would be crazy to decide I had ruined my yard or that I had made it disappear. It's like no such thing has happened, but I have indeed blocked my view of it, but I haven't touched it. I haven't ruined it. I haven't done anything to it. And the same is true in our circumstance here. So I would say absolutely coming across A Course in Miracles was life-changing in so many ways, but it took me off of the path of looking for information and onto the path of recognizing I had to reprogram my own mind. Having been in the computer business, I understand about computers being hacked. And I refer to the workbook as a spiritual technology for rewiring your brain, because we have to talk to people in the beginning at the time and space level. Although this is a teaching of non-duality, which says everything is actually one, and you have superimposed a world of form, shall we say, over it. And our goal is to remove our allegiance and the belief that the world of form is ever going to bring any happiness at all, and come back to practices which allows us to reprogram literally our brains. Because we all, if we are human, are inevitably incorrectly programmed. There's nobody that escapes this, even if you have the world's most fabulous, appropriate parents who know as much as there is about child rearing. For this reason, and of course, in our tiny little time together, I can't go into all of it, but until we're about 3 years old, the left brain, which is the thinking half of the brain, so to speak, as compared to the right brain, which is the intuitive, instinctive part of the brain, the left brain doesn't come online until we're about 3 years old. Because as young animals in the world that we think we're in, survival is job one. So all I need is this right brain where it's intuitive, it's instinctive. I'm learning with no thinking involved, strictly experientially, like what's safe to go toward, what's not safe, what do I want to retreat from? In other words, I'm learning how to stay alive in my environment. And only when I get to finally have a thinking mind can I start to invent the story of me. The ego mind, the sense of personal self, begins to form. It's an artificial construct. But now that we think that's what we are, our whole goal is to go, oh no, it actually isn't what you are. And that's what, of course, the course is about, is to help us come back to that place. And I would not give up my introduction to the course and all that it has brought into my life for anything in the world. It's made like this does not mean that I haven't had my hard places, my own issues that I haven't had to work through. I most absolutely certainly have, just like everybody else. But if we can see this not as meaning there's something the matter with us, but meaning that, okay, I'm now allowing this particular, we'll call it piece of guilt, to come into my awareness so that I can process it appropriately, let it go, and have a more expansive sense of self as a result of that. So that every time we do, you begin to feel larger. Every time I was ever with Bill Thetford, he had a kind of a magical effect, at least on me. It didn't matter if I was out in California or if he was visiting us in Denver, where I lived at the time. routinely, about 48 hours after we were no longer together, I would all of a sudden feel more. This is impossible to put into words. It's like, more of what? Well, more of nothing in particular and everything in general. I could feel myself be bigger. It's maddening to not be able to put into any kind of appropriate words what that's like. But the sense of safety, the sense of peace of mind, the sense of not being troubled by, shall we say, world events, as if I am at the mercy of world events or something like that, is worth its weight in gold. And I can't even really quite imagine what life would be like if the course hadn't come along. I'd probably have read, I don't know, 5,000 more books looking for the missing piece of information, not realizing nothing's missing. There's nothing the matter with me. I haven't ruined myself. No one has. All we've done is narrow our focus to the care and maintenance of this little story of me that I've invented, thereby sort of making the grace of life not go away. We don't ruin it. We just don't pay attention to it because our attention has now centered on what doesn't really serve us to center all our attention on. So anyway, I really can't imagine what life would have been like had the course not arrived right on schedule. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And of course, once I got excited about this, as was my way of living, so to speak, as I shared it with a lot of people. So at this point, between writing and teaching and educating and so on, I've dealt with, I have no idea how many thousands of people, trying to help them, try to help anybody who's interested, stop trying to learn A Course in Miracles. This is not material to be learned. It is a programming device for rewiring your brain so that you can begin to see and think about yourself in such a way that your inheritance, which is built into the core of your being, can be experienced. It's never adulterated. It's never gone. The light is never dimmed, but our attention is going someplace where it doesn't serve us. It's not evil. It's not criminal. It's just in the way. Just like the drape would not be criminal for covering up the window. It doesn't do anything to me, doesn't do anything to the yard. It does keep me from seeing my yard. So what can I say? If you have any questions or comments, I'd be happy to answer them.
I just want to say, I feel like that was the most eloquent summation of A Course in Miracles that I've ever heard. There's so much to unpack in there. You covered so much ground so beautifully. And Carly and I are just really grateful to have you share this with our community. And we appreciate you sharing your time with us today, Carol. And you can find more about Carol on her website. Do you want to tell our
yes, indeed,
listeners about it?
Yes. I spent many, many, many years traveling around teaching and doing workshops and doing all kinds of stuff, and realized that, you know, as I'm progressing toward the end of my life, that's not possibly the best use of my time. So about close to 10 years now, a brilliant young filmmaker, Robert Hess, asked if we could have breakfast together. And it's like, he worked for a very good friend of mine as their video producer. And could we possibly do some filming? And over the years, I've created some giant, and by giant, I mean sometimes as practically as big as this room, teaching models that visually demonstrate some of the basic principles in the course. What does it really mean about forgiveness and acceptance and healing and guidance and choice and so on and so forth? So we filmed a series called See How Life Works. partly somebody reminded me many years ago that my initials are C period Howe, Howe. So somebody raised their hand and said, you know that you could say see how with see how. It's like, well, see, the universe is so on top of things. I even married the right man to have the right last name. So things could work out 40 years later. So nevertheless, on our website, which is in the process of being designed, but some of the material is obviously there now, our signature program is 16 hours of professionally filmed. This isn't doing Zoom like we're now doing, that covers the major practices and principles of the course. We have a master class that then goes along with that, with additional material and a couple of other programs, so that it's the best use of my time now to reach the most people is to do things on film and to do things virtually rather than running around all over the planet like in earlier days. So I would invite you, and people love Bill's biography and the backstory of the course. Bill was a hilariously funny guy. And sometimes he could be simply side-splittingly hilariously funny. Most people would go, what? The person who's involved with the course is hilariously funny? Yes, he was a very, very quick wit, very delightful in that regard to be around. So somehow I always had the sense that Bill was sort of around, and I thought, am I just making this up? You know, what is this all about? So after a couple of years, because there was a huge amount of research and interviewing all the people he knew that were important for this work. And I said, Bill, okay, if you're here, it's like, what is the title of this book? And I got this sort of answer in my mind that said, you'll know when you get to the very end. And I said, I am at the end, because I had rearranged stuff for a couple of years. And I knew I was in the last chapter, and I was within the last few pages or paragraphs or something of the last chapter. And I said, I am at the end. And he said, you're not yet at the very end. It's like, okay, I'm not at the very, very end. So, you know, when you write, you don't really know what you're going to write next. And all of a sudden I found myself writing something like, don't know what it is exactly, but something like that somehow something will happen and we will find that, and never again will we forget to laugh. And when I wrote that sentence, it jumped off the page at me and said, there it is. He was right. It's in the very last sentence of the very last chapter. So never forget to laugh presented itself as the title. And that's what it's been ever since. But Bill was a super hilariously funny guy. And he could be very somber and very quiet and a lot of other things. But when he turned on his hilarious charm, he was like no other.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. So we will post the link to Carol's website with this video, and go check out See How Life Works and her book, Never Forget to Laugh. And we're honored to have you with us here today. Thank you again.
You're surely welcome. Thank you, dears.